Chapter 1724. Of course, Chinchichi was dissatisfied. But no matter how dissatisfied she was, it was useless. Her father, who had always doted on her, shut his mouth. And her brother didn't say anything at all. Chinbiyue even said, "This is the best future I can give you. Chinchichi, don't forget that what you want is my life." Chinchichi looked at her brother's cold side profile and suddenly understood. The sibling relationship between her and him had been broken after what she had done. She didn't say anything more. She packed her things and chose to leave. She completely understood that if she didn't leave, what awaited her wouldn't be a good place. Chinbiyue listened to his subordinates report that Chinchichi had successfully arrived at the place he had arranged. He told old Master Chin. He said in a low voice, "If you can't bear to part with her, you can visit her in the future." Even so, he didn't mention anything about changing his mind. However, old Master Chin shook his head and said, "No, it's better for her to bear the consequences of her own mistakes. Let her come back and kowtow to me when I'm 100 years old." Chinbiyue was silent. Spend the rest of her life in luxury? Gu Xingyin silently watched the Chen family's handling of the matter. She could understand. After all, Chinchichi was the Chen family's blood relative. It would be unreasonable if she really used any extreme means. However, old Master Chen and Chinbiyue were Chinchichi's blood relatives, so she could be forgiven for anything. Gu Xingyin wasn't, and neither was Dean. On the first night of Chinchichi's new home, she couldn't sleep because of the cold. The next day, she went to the doctor in a mess and told them what had happened to her, but no one believed her, because there was nothing wrong with the test results. The news spread to the Chen family on the other side of the ocean. Even old Master Chen only thought that his daughter was playing tricks to come back. For the first time, Chinchichi experienced what it was like to have no one to turn to for help. However, this was just the beginning. From that night onwards, every night, from midnight onwards, she would fall into that terrible feeling. She seemed to see her naked body surrounded by ice shackles. The piercing cold seeped into her limbs and bones, freezing her flesh and freezing her cells to death. The numbness and dull pain slowly eroded her body. When she woke up the next morning, Chinchichi even thought that she was dead. She went to the hospital like a madwoman, but the result was the same. Later, she stopped going to the hospital and went to the nearby church to pray, asking the priest to save her. However, it was useless. Every night, she felt like she would experience death. In just a short span of 10 days, Chinchichi woke up numbly one morning and was shocked to find that her hair had turned white. The woman in the mirror had a numb expression, lifeless eyes and pale skin. She looked like a woman in her 30s. Was that really her? Chinchichi felt like she was going crazy. Gu Xingyin just looked on coldly. Since he had such thoughts, he had to be prepared to bear the consequences. Otherwise, how would Chinchichi know how those who died by her hands felt when they died? This was a verdant valley. Chinbiyue was wearing simple casual clothes, looking at the dense forest in a daze. He had asked a lot of people about it, and with his amazing intuition he finally found this place. Would she really be here? It ended at 8 o'clock today. Friday, Saturday and Sunday 10 o'clock. Good night, everyone. Chapter 1725. Chinbiyue walked through the forest. Gu Xingyin, who had never paid special attention to non-mission targets, did not notice that someone had found this place. She was sitting on the grass in front of the small wooden house, with a piece of cloth spread out in front of her. On it was the broken puppet doll. Gu Xingyin was a little distressed. With the puppet doll in this state, it seemed that there was only one way left, to refine it again. Anyway, this doll had no consciousness of its own. Gu Xingyin was still a little sad when she thought of this. She really liked the doll that liked to stick to her. No wonder she felt that the doll was very smart. It turned out that it was not a consciousness condensed by a normal Yin spirit at all. It was originally a normal human being. How could a human who once had normal thinking not be smart? Gu Xingyin was lost in her thoughts when her expression suddenly changed. Someone was coming? When Chinbiyue walked here, he saw two very unique buildings among the trees and flowers at a glance. One was a small wooden house. The structure of the small wooden house was similar to a normal house, but the outside was plated with a layer of red material. A completely red house was placed in the middle of a mountain forest where few people would go. The other building was even stranger. From Chunbyue's experience, it looked very much like the tent-like buildings commonly used by nomads. This building was completely opposite to the wooden house on the side. Every part of it was silver white. The color and brightness of the building were as if the outer layer was plated with a layer of silver. He did not see anyone. But Chunbyu knew that he was not in the wrong place. He could not suppress the excitement in his heart, and continued to walk forward. He wanted to see the master who was said to have saved his life. He wanted to figure out why he was so obsessed with her. Before he got close to the house, he was suddenly blocked by a person who suddenly appeared from the grass. There was someone else here? Chunbyu was about to speak when he took a closer look and realized that the person in front of him was not a real person at all. She had the height of an ordinary person, and her appearance was lifelike. If he did not look carefully, he really could not tell that she was not a real person. However, if one were to take a closer look, one would be able to tell that no matter how lifelike the puppet was, it was still lacking in agility compared to a real person. Their eyes would never focus, and their expressions would never change. That is, unless their master gave them special instructions. Strangers are forbidden from approaching. The puppet suddenly spoke. His tone was a little stiff, as if something was grinding on a piece of wood, without the slightest hint of emotion. Chunbyu was surprised and cooperatively took 2 steps back. I'm Chunbyu. I'm here to thank Master Dian for saving my life. No one responded to him. Chunbyu didn't give up. He continued to shout. I'm Chunbyu. I'm here to thank Master Dian for saving my life. Gu Xingyin was listening in the room. Just as she was about to ask them to leave, she suddenly paused. She looked in the direction of the sound. There was a thick wall blocking her view, but at that moment, her gaze seemed to penetrate all obstacles and landed on the person outside the house. Gu Xingyin raised his eyebrows in surprise when he saw it. It's actually him? Chapter 1726. After Chunbyu shouted the second time, he was about to shout the third time. He saw that the red wooden hut on the left had opened by itself. A black figure appeared at the door. Chunbyu looked over subconsciously, and was suddenly stunned. Countless memories flooded into his mind and drowned him. From the moment he opened his mouth to the end, Gu Xingyin saw that the man was just staring at her blankly. She couldn't help but smile. Oh? How do you want to repay me? Chunbyu came back to his senses because of this sentence. He walked towards the wooden hut step by step. This time, the puppet didn't stop him. His face was calm, but his heart was beating fast. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. He walked until he was in front of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin also didn't expect that the person she wanted to save to complete the task would be her lover. Chunbyu had already walked to Gu Xingyin, but he didn't stop. Instead, he continued to take a step forward. His whole body was in contact with Gu Xingyin's body. Then he reached out and hugged her in his arms. How about I give myself to you? When Chunbyu said this, he was actually prepared to be rejected. He knew that his behavior was a little rash. But the moment his memory was suddenly restored, he couldn't suppress the desire that spread from the bottom of his heart. He was willing to follow his heart. However, Gu Xingyin didn't push him away. A minute later, Chunbyu, who realized this, was ecstatic. He tightened his arms until Gu Xingyin complained that he was too tight, and made her uncomfortable. Let go. My arm hurts. Chunbyu smiled and loosened some of his strength. But he didn't listen to Gu Xingyin's words and let go of his arms. I'm so happy, Dean. I'm so happy. I thought you would refuse. Gu Xingyin looked up at his silly face and said with disdain, Speak properly or I will doubt my taste. Chunbyu immediately straightened his posture. His expression returned to its usual calmness, but there was a satisfied smile on his face. It could be said to be one of the proudest things in life when the person you like also likes you. He spent several months with Gu Xingyin in the forest, and knew that the Chun family in the capital kept urging him to go back. Are you willing to accompany me to the capital? Chunbyu asked. Gu Xingyin shook her head without hesitation. Dean was not suitable to stay in a big city with a lot of people. She was born in this forest and grew up in this forest. Her future also belonged to this forest. Chinbiyue didn't seem surprised by this result. He stayed with Gu Xingyin for a few more days. Then one day he said goodbye to Gu Xingyin. Dian, I have some matters to attend to and need to return to the capital for a while. He did not hide it from her. He was the heir of the Chen family, and he had a burden that he couldn't get rid of. Gu Xingyin understood very well. A man would always have things that he couldn't give up, such as responsibilities and career. She liked him, so she couldn't restrain him in the name of so-called love. But 5 years. This is the time I give you. She looked at Chinbiyue. After 5 years, you don't have to come here again. A woman was willing to support her lover for love. But she shouldn't sacrifice her whole life for the so-called love. Chinbiyue looked at Gu Xingyin for a long time and nodded. Okay. Chapter 1727. Chinbiyue left. There was no sadness in their parting. Gu Xingyin sent Chinbiyue out of the valley as if he was an old friend. After that, she deliberately did not allow the system to pay attention to Chinbiyue's news. She lived her life alone as usual. Occasionally, she would accept 1 or 2 people's requests and use her identity as a puppet master to do something for them. However, this time not only did Gu Xingyin act according to his mood, he would also decide whether to help the person based on their request. A year later, her reputation was growing in a certain circle. Compared to her previous reputation of being evil and ruthless, it was much better. She refined the puppet doll again. The new puppet doll looked exactly the same as the previous one. Gu Xingyin also gathered countless Yin spirits and dripped her blood on it. However, this puppet doll didn't have its own consciousness like the previous one. It was just an ordinary puppet. At most, it was slightly more powerful than the other puppets. After that, another year passed. One day, Gu Xingyin woke up and saw the puppet doll sitting up on its own without her command. When it saw Gu Xingyin, it did not even know how to walk. Instead, it used all 4 of its limbs to crawl towards her. Its eyes were full of admiration. Gu Xingyin was caught off guard by this surprise. She had given the puppet doll the name Jiujiu. She had hoped that it would accompany her forever. Another year passed. Chen Qiqi, who was far away on the other side of the ocean, finally could not bear the price of living in this world. One day, she wore her favorite dress and put on her most exquisite makeup. Then she walked to a bridge in a foreign city and jumped off. She died on the spot. When Gu Xingyin heard this news, she did not think much of it. Didn't Chen Qiqi know that people who died in this way, no matter how beautifully they dressed up, would only see a bloody mess in the end? No matter what, Chen Qiqi's death meant that Gu Xingyin's mission was completed. When the deciduous trees in the valley sprouted new buds again, Gu Xingyin, who was collecting all kinds of materials in the forest, suddenly felt something. She straightened up and asked the system, "Is he here?" The system replied, "Yes, host." Gu Xingyin reached out her hand to cover her heart. She thought that after experiencing so many worlds, she was able to face anything with a heart as calm as still water. But when they heard the news, they jumped very quickly. In the end, she still couldn't transcend. After summoning the white tiger, Gu Xingyin headed towards her residence. From afar, she saw the man standing in front of her wooden house. It was exactly the same as when he stood in front of the wooden house 3 years ago. Hearing the tiger's roar, Chinbiyue turned around. He looked at the cold and beautiful black-robed woman on the white tiger's back and smiled. Then, he reached out his arm and caught the body that jumped into his arms. He hugged her tightly, as if he had filled all the emptiness in the past 3 years. "I'm just a jobless person now. Dean has to take care of me," he said with a light smile. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. "Okay, serve me well and I'll take care of you for a lifetime." Their fingers intertwined together for a lifetime. Chapter 1728. As a puppeteer, Dean's lifespan was much longer than Chinbiyue's. After Chinbiyue left, Gu Xingyin buried him in a place with beautiful scenery. Then he made a grave for himself beside Chinbiyue and laid in it. The last order she gave to White Tiger and Jiujiu was to fill up the hole in her coffin. When she left this world, Gu Xingyin seemed to hear dolls crying and White Tiger's mournful whimper. "Sorry, my partners," She closed her eyes and her consciousness fell into a deep sleep. Even without me, you can still live well in this world for a very, very long time. When she opened her eyes again, she was already in space. Proceed to the next quest. Gu Xingyin did not even bother to rest as she directly said. Yes, host, the system replied. When Gu Xingyin opened her eyes, she found that she was sitting inside a big bus. There were 5 other people in the same bus as her, 3 men and 2 women. Gu Xingyin did not say anything as she directly received the storyline of this world. After receiving the storyline, Gu Xingyin could only say that the guts of these 6 people were really big. The 6 people on the 2 buses, including Gu Xingyin, did not know each other until a day ago. They were 6 adventurers from different places. This time, they had gathered together to explore a ghost castle deep in the mountains. Gu Xingyin ridiculed. This was completely the plot of a horror novel. If she did not read the storyline, she would have guessed that the 6 of them would encounter a series of bizarre and supernatural events in that ancient castle. If the story was more bloody, only 1 or 2 of the 6 people would survive. After reading the storyline, it was confirmed that Gu Xingyin's ridicule was completely correct. The storyline of this world really was such a terrifying plot. Gu Xingyin's body was called Lungshi. After her parents died, they left her with an endless amount of property. Her hobbies were martial arts, adventure, and travel. Lungshi, who was 25 years old, had once won the provincial Sanda competition. She could be considered the most powerful person in this group of people. As for the other 5 people, one of them was a couple. They were ordinary white-collar workers and adventurers. This time, they took advantage of the New Year holiday to look for excitement. The remaining girl, Qing, was the target of this world's mission. She was a university student. The other 2 men were a horror novel author and a reporter. According to him, he wanted to write a column about the exploration of the ghost castle when he went back this time. Unfortunately, he was unable to return. Gu Xingyin looked at the 5 people and sighed in her heart. He really didn't know what these people were thinking. They knew that a lot of accidents had happened in Ghost Castle, but they still wanted to come out and get themselves killed. In the original plot, other than the supporting female lead, Qing, the other 5 would remain in the movie forever. Qing's outcome was not much better. She had gone crazy. Because she was scared out of her wits, she couldn't sense the outside world. Those ghosts couldn't affect her, so she was spared. Speaking of courting death, this Qing was the one who courted death the most out of all of them. Originally, when the 6 of them first entered the castle, they had a chance to leave. There were already people who wanted to retreat, but all of them changed their minds after Qing's provocation, ridicule, and encouragement. If she didn't know the storyline, Gu Xingyin would really think that this Qing was a spy sent by Ghost Castle. Don't be scared, it's not scary at all. Actually, this is just a cute ghost story. Serious face. I have to write this in the middle of the night. I'm really scared. Quick, give me a ticket to warm me up. Chapter 1729. Why did Qing say that? Because at the beginning of the plot, when everyone had just entered the ancient castle, that ancient castle had an owner. The owner of the ancient castle did not welcome these outsiders at all. This group of adventurers had received a warning from the beginning. At that time, the white-collar couple was scared and wanted to retreat. However, Qing dissuaded them, saying that adventures were more interesting when they were scary. The white-collar couple felt that it would be embarrassing if they could not even compare to a little girl. Thus, they gritted their teeth and continued. From the moment they entered the ancient castle, the 6 of them began to experience all kinds of bizarre events. For example, the ancient castle that had not been entered for many years was indeed clean and spotless. For example, there were 6 sets of tableware neatly arranged in the dining room. When the covered bowls were opened, there were bloody hands inside. At that time, even horror novel enthusiasts wanted to give up. However, Qing still stopped him. She was also very scared, but she felt more excited. She even comforted everyone, saying that someone must have known in advance that they were going to explore, and played a prank on them. Those hands were definitely fake props. No one dared to verify the authenticity of those hands. Under such circumstances, Qin Qingqing, who appeared to be very calm, actually managed to fool a large group of people just like that. In the afternoon, when the sky was about to turn dark, everyone heard the sound of many people moving around on the roof. Leng Shi finally made the decision to leave. When they went upstairs earlier, they were very sure that there was no one inside. The only way to go upstairs was to go to the hall where everyone was waiting. However, just as she was about to leave, the castle's old gate slowly closed in front of everyone. The whole world was pitch black. An evil voice rang in their ears. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ancient castle's carnival." After that, it was a bloody journey. Gu Xingyin calmly finished watching and said to the system calmly, "If I ask the driver to stop now, can I?" The system replied with a white flash, "Host, unless you voluntarily request to leave this world and give up the mission, no matter what excuse you use, the 6 of you will enter the ghost castle according to the plot development." Gu Xingyin, as a qualified mission enforcer, voluntarily giving up the mission was definitely not her style. "Isn't it just a ghost castle?" Gu Xingyin took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I'll continue." The system spoke again. Due to the uniqueness of the plot this time, the host's mission has changed slightly. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. The system said, "The ghost castle opens the gate of life once every 10 days. The host's mission is to survive these 10 days. Gu Xingyin swallowed with difficulty. "After all, I'm a human, and the other party is a ghost. Besides, I don't have to care about the others, right?" The system replied, "As for the others, if the host can save one more person's life, after the mission is over, the host will enjoy more gifts from the world." Gu Xingyin instantly understood. What he meant was that he didn't want to force her, but he hoped that she could save the lives of her companions. As if sensing Gu Xingyin's anxiety, the system said, "Due to the special nature of this mission, in addition to the ability to draw a skill, the system will also give the host 3 one-time gift packs to help the host complete the mission." Chapter 1730. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up when she heard this. The system never said useless things. That meant that if it said it would give something, it would definitely be something that would be extremely beneficial to the mission. She said, "Draw skill." System. "Ding, congratulations to the host, you have obtained the Psychic Beast Psychic Eye skill." Gu Xingyin. She had a feeling that although this skill sounded very useful, it made her feel even more scared. She couldn't help but ask, "What is the use of this Psychic Eye skill?" The system replied, "For this world, this skill is very useful. That means that the host can see the 3 realms and understand the yin and yang. Any ghost disguise or illusion will not be able to cause any threat to the host." In other words, Gu Xingyin could see all the living things in the ghost castle. This knowledge made Gu Xingyin shiver uncontrollably. Just as the system said, this was a very useful skill. After all, most of the time, ghosts were best at creating illusions that were several times scarier than themselves to confuse others. But at the same time, this also meant that Gu Xingyin would have to face all the ghosts directly. Gu Xingyin finally understood why she was so scared. She never thought that there was anything in this world that she was afraid of, until she received this mission. In fact, Gu Xingyin himself didn't know why he was like this when he heard about the ghost castle. He was able to cut down zombies without batting an eyelid. She was just afraid. Gu Xingyin, who treated the system as a good partner, didn't hesitate to tell her partner, "System, I think I'm afraid of ghosts." System. It comforted Gu Xingyin, "Don't be afraid, host. I will give you 3 big gift packages." Gu Xingyin's heart was filled with hope. Then, "Ding, host, please check. Guanyin Soul Suppressing Palace has 5 cards. Effect. Each card lasts for 24 hours. No ghosts can get close. Ding, host, please check. Receive the ability to remain calm in front of ghosts and monsters. Ding, host, please check. Received a dagger that can harm ghosts." Gu Xingyin silently looked at the 3 skills. She could understand the first and the third one. One was used to save her life, and the other was used to counterattack. Both were good things. But what the hell was the second one? The system explained, "The second skill means that no matter how terrifying the supernatural phenomenon is in front of the host will be able to remain calm. No matter how scared the host is, the host's aura will not lose. Gu Xingyin. Wasn't he just trying to save face? She sighed, opened her eyes, and began to look at the people in the car. He put his hand into his pocket and felt a few pieces of paper and a hard object that was a little hard to grip. This was the big gift from the system. Gu Xingyin looked over and saw a couple leaning against each other sitting diagonally to her left. They seemed to be the white-collar couple. Opposite him was a young girl with headphones plugged into her ears. She was holding a pink Hello Kitty case in her hand and seemed to be playing games. As if sensing Gu Xingyin's gaze, the girl raised her head and smiled at her. This was Qin Qingqing. On Gu Xingyin's right, a fashionably dressed man in black was fiddling with his camera. When he saw Gu Xingyin, he raised his hand and took a picture of her. He even smiled at Gu Xingyin with a very friendly expression. Chapter 1731. This reporter was called Zhang Chao. He was the most popular person in the group. Reporters generally had high EQ. Zhang Chao was a straightforward person and had a good relationship with everyone. Of course, he liked to chat with Gu Xingyin the most. The best thing was to take a few photos of her. According to Zhang Chao, Leng Shi was born to be a model. She had good looks and a good figure. A few photos he took were the kind that could be on the cover of a magazine. On the left of Gu Xingyin, there was a man with glasses sitting in the corner, keeping a certain distance from everyone. He was the horror novel author, Qin Ge. Qin Ge was his pen name. As for his real name, Qin Ge didn't reveal it. Everyone had met by chance, so naturally, he wouldn't deliberately ask. Gu Xingyin thought for a while and said, "Did you bring enough food in your backpack? I'm afraid that if there's an accident, it'll be hard to say if there's not enough food." She herself only brought enough food for a week. The reporter was the first to speak with a smile. "I travel a lot, so I'm very experienced in this kind of thing. Don't worry, I brought a lot of compressed food. It's definitely enough." The horror novel author, Qin Ge, also said slowly, "My food can probably last for a few days." Qin Qingqing opened her backpack for everyone to see. Gu Xingyin was speechless when she saw a lot of book reviews, chocolates, spicy sticks, and the like. This girl, did she really think that she was here for a vacation? The white-collar couple also looked. The man said, "The two of us brought about 3 days' worth of food." Gu Xingyin frowned. In other words, this time the 6 people, except for the reporter, didn't bring enough food. In a place like Ghost Castle, not to mention whether there was food inside, even if there was, she didn't dare to touch it. Looking outside, Gu Xingyin noticed that this was already the suburbs. There were almost no convenience stores or people. She walked to the front and asked the driver, "Brother, I want to ask, how long until we reach Ghost Castle? Will there be any shops on this road?" The driver was a middle-aged man in his 30s. They had spent a lot of money to hire him, but even so, the driver only dared to take them a few kilometers away from the Ghost Castle. According to the driver, that place was very creepy and he didn't dare to go near it. When they heard this, they were naturally even more excited. The driver opened his mouth and said, "About 2 more hours? There won't be any shops here. Let me think, there's a small village about 10 minutes ahead. I wonder if there'll be. I say, sister, there are so many fun places in the city. Why don't you go there? Why do you have to come to a place like this? Listen to Big Brother's advice and go back." He had already said this several times, but none of them took it seriously. Gu Xingyin thought, "I want to go back too, but the plot won't let me." She made a prompt decision and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you to send us to that village first. I'll give you more money then." The driver waved his hand. "That's not a problem. I'll drive you there." Gu Xingyin thanked him and returned to the car. She looked at the others and said, "We'll pass by a village later. Put down some unimportant things and pack more food." Qin Qingqing was unhappy after she said this. "What, it's just an adventure game. You're making it sound like an escape game. Other than food, there's only a game console in my bag. My snacks are enough to eat for a few days." Chapter 7. Before entering the castle, Gao Lingji shivered in the cold night as she wrote her story. "Believe me, not because I'm afraid. I swear on my integrity that this isn't a horror story." Chapter 1732. Gu Xingyin looked at Qin Qingqing. Gu Xingyin, who had read the plot, knew that Qin Qingqing was the only daughter of a relatively wealthy family. Perhaps it was in such a family that she developed such a personality. She was not afraid of anything and felt that everything would develop as she expected. Actually, it could be called ego. Those who thought differently from her were all wrong. The novelist and the reporter did not speak. The girl in the white-collar couple also said, "Is there a need to be so serious? We've all brought food for a few days. It should be enough, right?" She also disagreed. This woman, who had been in the workplace for several years, was obviously much nicer than Qin Qingqing. Leng Shi's persona was not a warm-hearted big sister, but a straightforward young lady. She said, "I'm just reminding everyone that no one knows what the situation in the ghost castle is like. In the face of an unknown situation, being fully prepared is our biggest guarantee. Anyway, I've already reminded you. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not." Her almond-shaped eyes swept across everyone in the car. "I've already asked the driver to take us to the village. Whether you need supplies or not, you can decide for yourselves. But there's one thing that I want to say first. If, and I'm saying if, there's really an emergency and there's not enough food, please don't blame others for being selfish and not helping her." After saying this, she closed her eyes to rest, not paying attention to the different expressions on everyone's faces. Everyone was a little confused by her words. After all, they were all strangers who had just met. There was a layer between them when they spoke and did things. No matter how they were usually, they were all amiable on the surface. This was the first time they had seen Leng Shi speak in such a serious tone. Qin Qingqing's expression was a little ugly. She had a feeling that Gu Xingyin was targeting her. The reporter's expression was a little serious. He was good at reading people's expressions and had a good eye for people. From the beginning, he knew that the most reliable person in this group was probably Leng Shi, the hot and sexy beauty. He thought that he could still see through Leng Shi, but from the beginning, Zhang Chao felt that he could not see through this woman in front of him. His reporter's intuition had helped him through many crises. So this time he made a decision to follow Leng Shi. The horror novelist, Qin Ge, looked at Gu Xingyin a few times before lowering his head. Although Gu Xingyin's words were not pleasant to hear, she was right. There was nothing wrong with making ample preparations. The couple seemed to be discussing something in a low voice. Soon, they arrived at the village. The small village looked very clean and tidy. No one was surprised to see strange cars coming in. Gu Xingyin was the first to get out of the car with her huge backpack. She looked at an auntie who was basking in the sun with her eyes squinted and asked, "Auntie, I would like to ask if you have a shop here?" The auntie lazily raised her head and said, "Go to the right, the third house." She was actually speaking Mandarin with perfect pronunciation. Gu Xingyin was delighted. "Thank you, auntie." She walked towards the direction the auntie was pointing at. Behind her, Zhang Chao also got out of the car. The couple seemed to hesitate for a moment, and the man also came down with his bag. Only Qin Qingqing and the woman were left. Girls probably followed the crowd. The other girl also said to Qin Qingqing, "Qingqing, why don't you go and buy something too?" Chapter 1733. When Qin Qingqing saw that everyone had left, she was actually a little shaken. Hearing this woman's words, she hesitated for a moment before getting out of the car. The convenience store in this small village wasn't big, but it was enough for these people. Gu Xingyin looked at the things on the shelves and chose some easier to carry into her bag. Energy drinks, purified water, chocolate, sugar, bread. They were all things that could maintain her body's energy and fill her stomach. She originally had some compressed food in her bag, which Gu Xingyin had kept. She glanced around and saw that there were a few books, an imported stereo, and a bunch of useless but expensive things in the bag. Gu Xingyin took them all out and threw them away. Seeing her like this, the few people who didn't think much of it all started to take it seriously. The moment Qin Qingqing entered, she saw Gu Xingyin throw her stereo on the ground. She exclaimed, "This is a stereo. It costs tens of thousands of yuan? You just threw it away like this? If you don't want it, you can give it to me." Gu Xingyin simply said, "If I were you, I'd think about how to fill my backpack with as many useful things as possible at this time. This stereo isn't of much use in that kind of place. She looked at the few of them and suddenly said, "If you're willing to believe me, prepare food for more than 10 days, everyone." After she said this, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the sky. At this time, it was a sunny day outside with no clouds in the clear sky. The sudden clap of thunder gave everyone a shock. They felt that this clap of thunder was really strange. It came so suddenly, as if it was warning someone. Everyone thought of Gu Xingyin's words just now and suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. Gu Xingyin's lips curled up into a smile. She knew that this was the law of the world detecting that someone suddenly made a sound and disrupted the rules, but it couldn't find the person behind the scenes, so it could only use this clap of thunder as a warning. The law of the world was no longer the one that could casually expel her from the world. No, it should be said that Gu Xingyin was no longer the Gu Xingyin who would be easily detected and rejected by the laws of the world. She tried to make another effort and said after some deliberation, "You might not believe me, but I used to learn some things from an old Taoist, such as divination. Our adventure this time is not very optimistic. If there's anyone willing to back out, it's still not too late." Before she could finish her sentence, a series of thunderous booms came from outside. Gu Xingyin smiled helplessly. Everyone covered their ears and waited for the thunder to pass. Gu Xingyin shrugged. "Do you see that? This is the so-called secret of heaven that cannot be revealed." As she spoke, she took another bag of bread and put it in her bag. At this time, the way they looked at Gu Xingyin was very different from before. But at this time they didn't realize what the so-called not optimistic meant. Qin Qingqing even looked at Gu Xingyin excitedly and said, "Leng Shi, you're really too amazing. This is really too amazing. Right now, I'm extremely curious about our upcoming journey." Gu Xingyin glanced around and found that not only Qin Qingqing, but everyone's faces were filled with excitement and eagerness to try. She sighed in her heart. Indeed, even if she wanted to change something, she still had to experience what she had to experience. Chapter 1734. However, it wasn't completely without benefits. At least for now, no one had any objections to Gu Xingyin's suggestion. Even Qin Qingqing stuffed her bag full of food. When they went out, Gu Xingyin asked again, "Do you have flashlights and weapons for self-defense?" Although she asked this, she was mainly looking at Qin Qingqing and the white-collar worker. Both of their expressions froze. Gu Xingyin knew that these two people obviously didn't bring anything. Gu Xingyin sighed. "I'll say it again. We're really not playing a game. Are you really not going to consider going back like this?" In the end, the two of them bought 2 portable flashlights and found 2 iron rods from a farmer's house as self-defense. Before the car started again, Gu Xingyin asked again if anyone was willing to leave. It was very dangerous ahead. Everyone rejected this suggestion. Gu Xingyin completely gave up. As expected, the world's plot wouldn't let the plot go off track. She could only say, "Everyone have a good rest." When the time came, there wouldn't be such a peaceful time. The car quietly drove towards a more and more desolate place. Gu Xingyin fell into a deep sleep and let the system call her at any time if there was a situation. She understood that when they reached a place like the ghost castle, let alone sleep, in such a tense situation, she might not even dare to close her eyes. Everyone was woken up by the driver. The driver stopped the car and said, "From here, keep walking. It'll take about an hour to see the place you want to go." The others didn't say anything. Qin Qingqing began to complain. "An hour? Won't we die of exhaustion? Uncle Driver, why don't you just send us a little longer?" The driver stopped smiling. "I told you in advance that I won't send you to the ghost castle. That's an ominous place." Qin Qingqing opened her mouth to say something, but Gu Xingyin stepped forward and took over the topic. "All right, the young lady is young and impetuous. Big brother, sorry to trouble you." When the driver saw Gu Xingyin, his expression softened a little. He sighed. "Sister, I know you won't listen to anything I say. I wish you good luck." Gu Xingyin suddenly stopped the driver. "Big brother, can I trouble you with something?" The driver asked curiously. "What is it?" Gu Xingyin said. "Starting from tomorrow, 10 days later, Can you come to this place to pick us up? The driver hesitated for a moment. To be honest, he really didn't want to come to such an evil place. Gu Xingyin put on a pleading look and said, "If you come, I'll double the price." The driver was a little tempted. He said, "When I come, when will you come out?" Gu Xingyin hesitated for a moment before saying, 10 days later. The earlier you come, the better. She thought for a moment and added, "If you wait until 5 in the afternoon and still don't see us, then quickly drive away. Don't stay in this place at night." Listening to her say such ominous words, the driver couldn't help but shudder. Other people's faces also changed. The driver quickly said, "Okay, I'll wait for you here 10 days later." Gu Xingyin nodded. Looking at the white minibus leaving, Gu Xingyin turned her head and looked at the unknown distance. "Let's go," she said slowly. Behind her, several other people followed her and embarked on the journey. The night watch ended. "Look, I didn't lie to you, right? It's not scary at all. Tomorrow, Gao Lingji will get up early and write the update early. If you have a ticket, please throw a ticket and bless this team to return safely." Chapter 1735. The group of people began to walk on the vast countryside. Gu Xingyin actually didn't understand why there was an ancient castle that looked like it existed in the Middle Ages in a place like this. However, this was the setting of the world's plot. The others didn't find anything strange about it at all. Gu Xingyin could only suppress her doubts. The sun in the west was getting closer and closer to the horizon. Gu Xingyin looked at the time. It was 5:30 in the afternoon. They had already walked for half an hour. They estimated that they would reach the ghost castle in another half an hour. 6 in the afternoon was when the sky turned dark. Gu Xingyin sighed. Even the time was set so strangely. It would be a waste of the plot if nothing happened. Qin Qingqing began to complain. "It's so heavy. I'm so tired. Why do I have to carry so much?" Gu Xingyin glanced at her. Qin Qingqing's pink backpack was full. It was full of food that Gu Xingyin saw she stuffed in herself. She was also holding a metal stick in one hand, and sighing as she walked. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but say, "If you really can't go on, you can rest here and wait for us." She meant what she said. To be honest, it was better to let Qin Qingqing stay here in the beginning than to let her go to the ghost castle to cause trouble. Although Gu Xingyin knew that most of the things in the original plot were set up by the plot, she still couldn't have any good feelings for a girl like Qin Qingqing. Qin Qingqing's eyes widened. "How is that possible? I've already walked all the way here. Think about it. I spent so much effort and walked so far. I wasted my rare vacation to come all the way to this godforsaken place. How can I give up?" She glared at Gu Xingyin angrily. She felt that this woman was always targeting her. Gu Xingyin sneered. "Since you know that you won't give up, why are you still complaining here? Other than wearing down your willpower and making yourself more tired, complaining won't get you anything." Qin Qingqing rolled her eyes. "I just like it. What can you do about it?" When Zhang Chao, who was in the team, saw this, he hurriedly tried to persuade her. The white-collared woman also spoke nicely. Ever since Gu Xingyin had revealed her skills, she had begun to show signs of becoming the leader of the group. This group of people was going to take a risk. Naturally, they were not willing to offend someone with real ability. As for Qin Qingqing, she was the youngest here, so they were all willing to give in to her. In the end, Gu Xingyin and Qin Qingqing did not quarrel. Of course, even if those people did not stop her, Gu Xingyin would not have a conflict with Qin Qingqing. After all, she was not willing to waste too much energy on Qin Qingqing. The group continued walking. Soon, they saw the destination of their trip. In the distance, against the background of the gray sky, an ancient castle with black and gray colors appeared in front of everyone. Although it was quite far away, the antiquity and sense of age still assaulted his senses. The novelist took a look and said longingly, "This is the perfect material." The reporters could not help but pick up their cameras and take a few good photos. Qin Qingqing suddenly muttered, "Look at the sky above the ancient castle. Doesn't it look like it's black?" When everyone heard this, they took a look. It really did look like it. Above the steeple of the ancient castle, the sky really did seem to be different from the other places. It gave off an ominous feeling. Chapter 1736. The white-collared woman's face showed a trace of fear, but the novelist Qing Ge said with a smile, "This is because of your psychological reasons, right? Or perhaps, this is just a visual illusion. If you don't believe me, look carefully. Where is the darkness?" The few of them followed his words and looked again. Indeed, the sky above was no different from other places. Everyone laughed and joked that they were just being paranoid. Only Gu Xingyin did not laugh, because what she saw was completely different from what the others saw. Qin Qingqing said that the sky above the ancient castle had a trace of black and gray, but in Gu Xingyin's eyes, it was not like that at all. In Gu Xingyin's eyes, the ancient castle in front of her, the entire structure, was completely shrouded in wisps of black fog. With one look, she knew that it was not a place that normal people would go. Gu Xingyin's expression became even calmer. "System, if I turn around and walk back now, is it too late?" "System. Host, you can try." Gu Xingyin turned around and walked away without another word. But after 2 steps, she turned around and walked back with an expressionless face. The others looked at her strangely. Zhang Chao asked, "Leng Shi, what's wrong?" Gu Xingyin said calmly, "Nothing. I just remembered that I seem to have forgotten something." This excuse was not at all sincere. Qin Qingqing sneered and said, "Our great beauty Leng, don't tell me you're scared?" Gu Xingyin did not want to bother with her at all. She wanted to say, "Do you believe that if you saw the same thing as me, you would not only be scared, you would probably cry?" She gritted her teeth at the so-called world's plot. Just now, when she turned around and walked back, she clearly felt a strong resistance. With every step she took, the resistance on her body increased. She had no choice but to retreat. The system was right. Unless she gave up on the mission, she had no other choice. Gu Xingyin sighed slightly. Looking at the dark castle in front of her, she said calmly, "Let's hurry up and walk forward. It's going to be dark soon." A gust of cold wind blew, accompanied by Gu Xingyin's indifferent and emotionless tone, making everyone shudder. The 6 of them subconsciously moved closer together. The white-collared woman could not help but grab her boyfriend's sleeve. They continued walking forward. After 5 or 6 minutes, they walked to the entrance of the ancient castle. At this moment, the last rays of light from the sky disappeared below the horizon. Night began to cover the sky. The entire land was about to fall into darkness. Gu Shengyulin's footsteps. She really wanted to stop, because in the instant when the sky darkened, no one else could see. Only she could clearly see the pairs of blood-red eyes on the pitch-black ancient castle in the dark night. Those cold blood-red eyes looked at the outsiders emotionlessly. Those sticky and bloodthirsty eyes made Gu Xingyin's expression even colder. Damn it, her expression did not change. She was as calm as Mount Tai. Gu Xingyin could not help but curse in her heart. They had already reached the entrance. At this moment, everyone seemed to sense a trace of fear similar to Mo Qian's. The white-collared woman was a girl after all. Her voice trembled. I'm a little scared. Why don't we not go in? Let's stay here and go back tomorrow?" Chapter 1737. The white-collared woman's words struck a chord in Gu Xingyin's heart. She wanted to nod immediately and agree that they shouldn't go in. They would camp outside for a night and go back tomorrow. But she couldn't say that. Then, she listened coldly as Qin Qingqing mocked the white-collared woman. "TSK, don't forget why we're here. We're already at our destination, and you still want to back out?" As she spoke, she reached out and pushed forward. Creak, creak. The ear-piercing sound of the iron door slowly opening entered everyone's ears. Gu Xingyin's expression became even calmer, to the point of indifference. Qin Qingqing was still muttering, "I'm actually so strong?" Gu Xingyin closed her eyes. "It's not that you're strong. It's that the thing inside is inviting us in. Since things had come to this, there was no use in running away." She silently took out the dagger that she had been keeping in her pocket. Holding it in her hand, she said faintly, "Everyone take your self-defense items. No one has been here for many years. Who knows if there might be something unfriendly here? 2 of you, turn on your flashlights. The rest of you, keep yours for later use." As she spoke, she turned on her flashlight with one hand. Seeing this, Zhang Chao also turned on his flashlight. Gu Xingyin saw him take out a foldable Swiss Army knife from his backpack. Gu Xingyin praised, "This knife is not bad. You actually passed the security check?" Zhang Chao smiled proudly. "Awesome, right?" Thus, the six of them used the flashlight's light to walk into the castle. After entering through the main door, they should be in the reception hall. Everyone slowly looked over with their flashlights and could see some things stained with dust and cobwebs. There was a huge rectangular dining table carved out of white jade marble. Judging from its length, it should be able to accommodate at least 20 people. There were lifelike statues in the living room, murals on the ceiling, and so on. These things might have been very beautiful and noble a few hundred years ago. But after such a long time, in the eyes of these adventurers, they had become things that made their hair stand on end. Gu Xingyin recalled the plot. It was their first night in the castle. There wouldn't be any real danger that night, but there would be all kinds of mischief. She knew that those pranks were just some residents of the castle who didn't welcome them. Tonight was the only chance for the six of them to leave the castle. However, the six of them didn't manage to catch him. "Ah!" The white-collar woman suddenly screamed. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Gu Xingyin calmly shouted at her, "Calm down. What happened?" The white-collar woman buried her head in her boyfriend's arms and pointed at a place with a trembling finger. "There's someone there." Everyone's hearts clenched. The air seemed to freeze all of a sudden. This was an ancient castle that had been abandoned for countless years. Other than them, who else could there be? After a few seconds of dead silence, Gu Xingyin moved her hand and shone the flashlight precisely at the place the white-collar lady had mentioned. Zhang Chao held back his scream and let out a sigh of relief. He forced a smile and said, "It's fine. It's just a statue." Only then did everyone carefully examine it. Sure enough, it was just a lifelike statue of an elegant and beautiful woman wearing a cream-colored waist-length dress. Her eyes were lowered as she stood there. Chapter 1738. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Qin Qingqing patted her chest and heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank goodness, thank goodness. You scared me to death." She looked at the white-collar lady who was still in shock and couldn't help but complain. "I say, Sister Shuewan, you're already nervous in a place like this. Can you not scare people? Look carefully before you scream. I was scared to death by you." Gu Xingyin didn't care about Qin Qingqing's complaints. The moment the flashlight shone on it, her pupils constricted. That place, how was that a statue? It was clearly a woman wearing a white dress with a pale face. Oh no, it was a female ghost staring at them expressionlessly. "Gu Xingyin," she said to the system in a trembling voice, "I'm really scared." Speaking of which, she had been a ghost king before. But the feeling back then was completely different from now. Not to mention that when she was Lan Ling, all she saw were basically ghost cultivators. What were ghost cultivators? A ghost that could cultivate actually looked no different from a cultivator of the immortal or devil path. Even if some ghosts revealed their true appearance under special circumstances, she wasn't afraid because she could turn them into ashes with a wave of her hand. Moreover, those ghosts were all her fanatical admirers. But now, if the system hadn't given her the ability to remain calm and collected, Gu Xingyin believed that she would have started screaming at this moment. But under the powerful halo of the skill, even if she was facing a real female ghost, she could still remain calm and act cool. Gu Xingyin forced herself to look away from the female ghost indifferently. She saw that Zhang Chao seemed to be curious and wanted to go forward to study the statue, so she quickly said, "Don't go." Zhang Chao turned to look at her in confusion. Then, Gu Xingyin realized that the female ghost also turned her head slowly and fixed her gaze on her. Gu Xingyin. "System." Her voice was trembling at this moment. The system calmly comforted her. "Host, don't be afraid. You know that this ghost won't hurt you tonight. At most, it will scare you. Just pretend that you didn't see it." Gu Xingyin. How could this be the same? The system hesitated. Then, why don't I take back your ability as a spiritual beast? Gu Xingyin thought about it for a moment, then decisively refused. The system. Gu Xingyin said, forget it. I can see them. Although I'm scared, I can at least know their movements. If I can't see it, I'll probably be even more nervous and scared. The system nodded. What the host said made sense. Gu Xingyin could only ignore the female ghost's gaze. She braced herself and said to Zhang Chao expressionlessly, we don't know anything about this place. It's better not to touch anything. She took 2 steps forward and grabbed one of Zhang Chao's hands. When she turned around, she gave him a look. Zhang Chao didn't understand what she meant, but he knew that Gu Xingyin had some special skills. He quickly nodded, indicating that there was no problem. When Qin Qingqing saw this scene, she was a little unhappy. There were 3 men in this group. One of them had a girlfriend. Qing Ge was an otaku. He wore glasses and always had a gloomy expression. Only Zhang Chao looked bright and handsome. He also dressed very fashionably. It was easy for girls to fall for him. Qin Qingqing had some unclear thoughts about Zhang Chao. However, Zhang Chao was obviously more interested in the mature and cold Leng Shi. At this moment, when she saw the 2 of them, Qin Qingqing's heart was filled with anger. Before Gu Xingyin could stop her, she walked in front of the statue and touched it. It's not a big deal. First 4 chapters. If there were no accidents, this author would probably write all the chapters in the morning. Quick, give me 2 tickets. Give me strength. Chapter 1739. Gu Xingyin watched helplessly as Qin Qingqing approached the female ghost and patted her on the back. Then, the female ghost seemed to be attracted by her. She finally looked away from Gu Xingyin and fixed her eyes on Qin Qingqing. Qin Qingqing didn't notice it at all. She even took out her mobile phone, turned on the backlight, and took a picture of herself and the female ghost together. Gu Xingyin saw that the female ghost gently put her pale hand with green nails on Qin Qingqing's shoulder. She shuddered in her heart. Then she said calmly, Qin Qingqing, don't be stubborn. Come here. Qin Qingqing was dumbfounded. She just looked at her mobile phone with a pale face. Gu Xingyin couldn't help raising her voice. Qin Qingqing. Her voice seemed to wake Qin Qingqing up. She screamed, turned around, and threw her mobile phone on the ground. Then she ran to Gu Xingyin without caring about anything else. Gu Xingyin watched as the female ghost glanced in his direction before her figure gradually disappeared into the darkness. Only a real statue was left in that place. Qin Qingqing's reaction shocked everyone. She ran to the middle of the crowd almost in an instant, and pulled the sleeve of Qin Ge, who was closest to her. With the help of the flashlight, everyone could see Qin Qingqing's deathly pale face. She opened her mouth and kept gasping for breath. It seemed that she couldn't even speak. Gu Xingyin suddenly reached out and patted her on the back. He called out her name sternly, Qin Qingqing. This sound was like a clap of thunder in Qin Qingqing's ears, making her come back to her senses in an instant. Qin Qingqing blankly opened her eyes and looked at her companions around her. Suddenly, she burst into tears. In the silent darkness, Qin Qingqing's behavior made several people's hearts palpitate. The white-collar worker named Shui Wan asked cautiously, Qingqing, what's wrong with you? What did you see just now? Just now, all of them saw that Qin Qingqing suddenly showed that kind of expression after seeing the photo on the phone. Hearing her mention this, Qin Qingqing choked on her words. She said with a trembling voice, That statue is not a person. Zhang Chao laughed and comforted her. Of course that statue isn't a person. It's... After he finished speaking, his voice stopped. Qin Qingqing wouldn't say something like that for no reason. Sure enough, in the next moment, Qin Qingqing said with a horrified expression, That's not a human. That's a female ghost. After I took the photo, when I looked at it, it wasn't a statue that was standing beside me. It was a female ghost with a pale face. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone fell into silence. After a long time, another white-collar woman said with a trembling voice, Qing Qing, don't joke around. We're in a place like this, don't scare us. Qin Qingqing shook her head desperately. It's true, it's true. If you don't believe me, you can check my phone yourself. She pointed at the phone that was still lying on the ground with a faint light on the screen. The few of them looked at each other, but no one dared to pick up the phone that was thrown on the ground. Chapter 1740. In the end, it was still Gu Xingyin who walked over. She hoped that what Qin Qingqing said was true. If that was the case, she would have a reason to convince these people to leave the castle tonight. Gu Xingyin was not particularly afraid of picking up the phone. After all, she had seen a real ghost. Why would she be afraid of a mere photo? She walked forward and picked up the phone on the ground. She glanced at it while she was at it. With just one glance, her heart sank. Everyone looked at Gu Xingyin nervously. When they saw that her expression did not change after picking up the phone, they all relaxed. According to normal reactions, if Leng Shi really saw a ghost, she would not be so calm. Qin Qingqing also stared at Gu Xingyin with wide eyes. She did not believe that she had seen wrongly. Gu Xingyin calmly walked in front of everyone, and then pointed the phone screen at them. Everyone saw very clearly that in the picture, it was a photo of Qin Qingqing and a statue in a white dress. However, even though the lights were on at night, the surrounding situation still looked a little eerie. However, everyone could clearly see that it was just an ordinary statue. It was a false alarm. Shuewan smiled and said, "Qingqing, you were too nervous, so you were hallucinating, right? I really thought that you were very brave. Now it looks like you're about the same as me." Qin Qingqing was a little confused. To be honest, she did not think that what she had seen was an illusion at all. It was such a real glance. Even now, she could still remember the female ghost's appearance. She was wearing the exact same dress as the one on the statue. Yes, her face was also very similar to the statue's. Her pale green fingers were on her arm in the photo, staring at her faintly. How could that be an illusion? Qin Qingqing threw the phone out again. This time the phone did not hold up. The light on the screen went out instantly. She did not know if it was completely broken or what. Qin Qingqing shook her head and said in a panic, No, what I saw was definitely not an illusion. That statue is a ghost." Unfortunately, her appearance was like that of a little girl who had suffered a great shock. The words she spoke were not very convincing. However, Gu Xingyin still wanted to take this opportunity to encourage them. "I also think that this place is a bit strange. Why don't we stop here and go out?" It was impossible for her to leave by herself, but she hoped that someone could leave. If she could complete her mission, the outcome would be much better. The moment she said this, Qin Qingqing immediately nodded. In the beginning, this little girl had always mocked others for being timid, but now, she was more eager to leave than anyone else. Zhang Chao hesitated for a moment before saying, "Actually, we didn't encounter any supernatural phenomenon, right? Don't scare yourself. I'm here to take risks. I don't want to give up because of such a small matter." Qin Go also nodded. "I also feel that there is no need to leave." The couple looked at each other. The girl, Shuewan, seemed to be a little scared, but the man was obviously braver and was still eager to try. Then, everyone turned to look at Gu Xingyin. Qin Qingqing also looked at Gu Xingyin with anticipation. She hoped that Gu Xingyin could support her and leave with her. Gu Xingyin herself was very willing to leave. However, facing everyone's trusting gazes, she was crying in her heart. She said coldly, "I want to stay here." Chapter 1741. After Gu Xingyin's words, everyone basically made their choice. Except for Qin Qingqing, everyone expressed that it was not easy to come here. So how could they leave without any gains? Gu Xingyin looked at Qin Qingqing, hesitated for a moment and said, "Qingqing, why don't you go out alone and wait for us outside?" Qin Qingqing looked at the gloomy environment around her, almost holding back her tears, and shook her head. "No, I'll go with you." If she went with the others, at least there would be someone to take care of her. But if she went out alone, who knew what would happen? Qin Qingqing understood very well. Thus, the matter was settled. Looking at the surrounding environment, Gu Xingyin said, "It's dark now, we're not in a hurry to explore. Let's find a place to rest for the night, and wait until dawn tomorrow to slowly explore. What do you think?" Although she said this, she knew better than anyone else in her heart. When dawn came tomorrow, the peace here would no longer be there. The real Azura purgatory would officially begin. The rest of the people looked at the gloomy environment, and in addition, they had been in the car for half a day and walked for so long, So they all nodded. Gu Xingyin looked around, found a relatively spacious and clean place by the wall, and sat there. The few of them lit up their flashlights and took out some food from their bags. Gu Xingyin also warned them very seriously. In this place, you have to be vigilant at all times, especially your bags with food. You must be careful, and you can't make any mistakes. The few of them nodded. After eating, Gu Xingyin divided the 6 of them into groups of 2, and took turns to keep watch at night. We don't know what's in this castle. It's better to have someone keep watch at night. I'll keep watch first, you guys go and rest. Gu Xingyin took out the dagger at her waist and said. Zhang Chao also volunteered. I'll go with you? The white-collar man looked and said, then in 3 hours, you guys wake me and Wan up. We'll keep watch for the second round together. Qing Ge and Qin Qingqing were in the 3rd round. Everyone nodded. Gu Xingyin and Zhang Chao sat back to back while the others closed their eyes and fell asleep. Time passed slowly. Gu Xingyin could hear the long breathing of the person behind her. Apparently, they had fallen asleep after a long day of tiredness and tension. Her eyes were wide open, and she was not sleepy at all. She was afraid that something would suddenly jump out from beside her. He really got what he wanted. Gu Xingyin glanced around, and saw a young man of about 12 or 13 years of age suddenly appear from the opposite corner. The young man looked very delicate and cute, but his face was abnormally pale, reflecting a dim light in the darkness. He stood there with his back straight, his eyes flashing with a faint green light as he looked over. He was wearing very shabby clothes. The style was completely different from what he was wearing now. It looked like the formal attire of the nobles in ancient Western times. Gu Xingyin looked at the little brat calmly. Zhang Chao seemed to have sensed something. He shivered, rubbed his hands and said to Gu Xingyin, Leng Shi, do you feel that it's especially cold? Gu Xingyin said in her heart, a ghost is staring at you without blinking. Of course you would feel cold. She could only comfort Zhang Chao. Maybe the temperature difference at night is bigger. Zhang Chao nodded. After a while he came over and said in a low voice, Leng Shi, I still feel that this place is a bit strange. Gu Xingyin did not pay attention to him, because she saw that the little brat was floating towards her. 7 Night. Gao Lingji, go take a nap. I'll see you later. Chapter 1742. Gu Xingyin watched as the little ghost got closer and closer to her. His legs were clearly leaning against the ground, but when he moved, she didn't see him move at all. His whole body was slowly moving towards the 2 of them. With this and the surrounding environment, Gu Xingyin was sure that no horror movie could produce such an effect. While she was nervous, Zhang Chao was still talking. As if to ease the tense atmosphere, Zhang Chao said half-jokingly, do you think we'll really meet a malicious spirit that has lived for hundreds or thousands of years in here? Gu Xingyin. She wanted to say, yes, we've already met it. While Zhang Chao was talking, the little ghost had already arrived beside the 2 of them. At first, he stood in front of Gu Xingyin, and then bent down. Gu Xingyin almost lost her breath, because the little ghost bent down and stared straight at Gu Xingyin's face with his pale green eyes. Gu Xingyin didn't need to look down to see that the little ghost had already grown bronze-silver cufflinks. System. Gu Xingyin's voice was trembling in her consciousness. At this time, the only thing she could trust and confide in was the system that accompanied her. I'm scared to death, it's too scary. Gu Xingyin's voice was even crying. The system calmly comforted her. Don't be afraid, host. He won't hurt you. You just need to pretend that you can't see him. On the surface, Gu Xingyin didn't seem to be afraid at all. She sat quietly with a tense expression, as if she was thinking about something. Zhang Chao, who was sitting back to back with her, felt a little strange. Why did he feel that Leng Shi's body was so stiff? He asked casually. Gu Xingyin quickly turned her head with this excuse and heaved a sigh of relief. She made up an excuse and said that she felt a little cold at night. Fortunately, the little brat also felt a little bored. He got up and left Gu Xingyin's side. Gu Xingyin felt that her back was drenched in cold sweat. Then Zhang Chao was in trouble. He suddenly shuddered and complained to Gu Xingyin. This place is really cold. I always feel like I'm sitting in the cold wind of winter. Gu Xingyin did not dare to look back at him. That was because she saw that the kid didn't leave. Instead, he went to Zhang Chao's side. He seemed to be very interested in the camera hanging on Zhang Chao's chest. He was playing with the camera with his pale hands with long black nails. The little ghost's posture made it seem as if his entire body had shrunk into Zhang Chao's embrace. Of course he would feel cold. Gu Xingyin finally couldn't help but look back at Zhang Chao, who didn't know anything. He was just frowning because of the cold. She sighed in her heart. Sure enough, the ignorant were fearless. If Zhang Chao could see it, he would probably collapse if he saw a little brat in his arms. What's the matter? Zhang Chao asked in confusion. Gu Xingyin replied casually, nothing. Zhang Chao asked, then why did you suddenly push me? Gu Xingyin. She suddenly fell silent. Zhang Chao seemed to realize something and suddenly fell silent. After a long time, Gu Xingyin felt that the sleeve of her coat was gently pulled. Zhang Chao's trembling voice came. Lung Shi, just now you didn't push me, right? Chapter 1743. Gu Xingyin turned around and looked at the little ghost who was standing beside them in boredom. She saw a faint handprint on Zhang Chao's shoulder. It was obvious that it wasn't her own. She tried her best to calm down and comfort Zhang Chao. Don't scare yourself. It's not like that. Zhang Chao didn't think that the push just now was an illusion. But when he saw that even a woman like Lung Shi was so calm, he felt that his reaction was really embarrassing. He could only suppress that trace of fear and quietly wait for time to pass. The little ghost stayed here for a while and then left. But this wasn't the end of the matter. In the dark and fearful atmosphere, time always passed extra slowly. Zhang Chao raised his wrist to look at the time almost every few minutes. Then he realized with despair that only a few minutes had passed since the last time he looked at the time. Gu Xingyin, who was looking at every corner of the hall, suddenly noticed that Zhang Chao's breathing became heavy. Something happened. Gu Xingyin turned around and hurriedly asked, Zhang Chao, what's wrong? This time, Zhang Chao's voice was really trembling. He pointed at the empty floor in front of him. Not only his throat, but his whole body was trembling. Blood. The floor is full of blood, and it's rushing towards us. Gu Xingyin looked carefully. There was nothing on the floor. But when she looked up, she did see a woman wearing a pointed hat on the wall on the ceiling, smiling at them. But that smile, no matter how you looked at it, it was so strange that it made people's hair stand on end. Gu Xingyin. This group of ghosts really didn't give people peace at all. Zhang Chao couldn't help but take a few steps back, as if he was avoiding something. He just happened to trip Qingge, who was sleeping behind him. Qingge was groggily woken up and scolded impatiently. Then he seemed to realize where he was. He hurriedly opened his eyes and picked up the self-defense weapon that he had been sleeping with. Then he pulled Zhang Chao and asked, What's wrong? What happened? Zhang Chao was pulled awake by him. He pointed at the floor. There's so much blood. Qingge was shocked. He looked in the direction that Zhang Chao was pointing at and shone his flashlight over there. It was completely blank. Where was the blood? Zhang Chao also glanced at it. The blood was really gone. Qingge probably knew that his companion was probably nervous, so he didn't scold him. He only said, You must be too nervous, causing your body to hallucinate. There's nothing. Don't be afraid. As he spoke, he looked at the time and took the initiative to ask Zhang Chao to switch places, so that Zhang Chao could rest for a while. Looking at Zhang Chao's current condition, it was not suitable for him to continue keeping watch. Zhang Chao didn't refuse. After Zhang Chao lay down, it became Gu Xingyin and Qingge sitting together. Qingge suddenly said, I'm very curious. Lung Shi, I've been in the ghost castle for so long, but I've never seen you scared. Gu Xingyin thought, that's because I'm afraid in my heart, and I can't show it on my face. But she couldn't say that out loud. Under such circumstances, she absolutely could not say anything that would weaken the morale of the team. Gu Xingyin said calmly, Scared? At any time, fear is the most useless thing. Qingge looked at Gu Xingyin with a strange expression, as if he didn't expect a woman to say something like that. Chapter 1744. Nothing much happened in the following period of time. Gu Xingyin successfully changed shifts with the white-collar couple. She silently closed her eyes and lay on the floor. This was the last night of peace. In the future, no one would dare to sleep even if there was time for them to sleep. In fact, this peaceful was only relative. However, Gu Xingyin was sure that she would not be in any danger, so she reluctantly fell asleep. Perhaps it was because the rest of the people had better luck, but after that, there were no more strange occurrences. The next morning, Gu Xingyin was the first one to wake up from his sleep. She opened her eyes and sat up. Qin Qingqing and Zhang Chao were sitting back to back. Qin Qingqing had already fallen asleep with her head down, while Zhang Chao had a cigarette in his mouth. Obviously, he was not sleepy at all. This was the first time Gu Xingyin saw the whole picture of the castle. It was very big. He didn't feel it when he came here at night, but now just the hall on the first floor was already a few hundred square meters. Inside, there were cobwebs, dust, and broken furniture, but he could still vaguely see the splendor of the past. Gu Xingyin looked to both sides. There were a few open windows high up on the wall. From afar, he could still see the gray sky outside through the windows. Gu Xingyin called Zhang Chao and woke the others up. It was the first time that everyone saw the castle in the daytime. Maybe it was because of the light, but the castle only revealed a heavy smell of decay. It was not as scary as in the dark. Qin Qingqing threw the fear of last night to the back of her mind. She said excitedly, "This castle is so big. It will probably take us a day or two to walk around." Zhang Chao picked up his camera and could not wait to take a few photos. He looked at the photos in the camera and was very satisfied with the results. The horror novelist Qin Ge was also very excited. Obviously, he had found some good material. Gu Xingyin looked at the aristocratic family on her watch and said, "Everyone, eat something first. After that, we will start." It was 5:40 in the morning. Everyone brought their own food, so they chatted and ate at the same time. When everyone was full, Gu Xingyin looked at the time again. 6 o'clock sharp. She took a deep breath and said, "All of you, stand beside me." Everyone was confused. However, Zhang Chao and Qin Ge both subconsciously stood beside Gu Xingyin. When the rest of the people saw this, they also followed suit and squeezed together. In the next moment, the world in their eyes changed. Those dirty, old, and rotten things seemed to have gone back in time in an instant. It was like an exquisite magic. Everyone watched the entire castle as if it had gone back hundreds of years, and returned to her most beautiful and dazzling moment in an instant. The floor became spotless, and the murals on the ceiling became colorful again. On the dining table not far from everyone, there was a pure white tablecloth without a trace of dirt. On it, there were even a few newly bloomed roses in a crystal vase. All of this subverted everyone's imagination. What appeared in front of everyone was a luxurious castle comparable to a palace. No one had seen this kind of majesty, luxury, and splendor before. However, at this moment, no one expressed any amazement at this, because this was too abnormal. Today's 10,000 words are over. Here is a small survey. Do you want to continue reading in such a scary way, or do you want to skip as soon as possible and start the pet warming plot? Leave a comment at the bottom of this chapter. Gao Lingji will make appropriate adjustments according to the majority of the requests. Finally, you know what I'm talking about. I'm asking for tickets. Good night. Chapter 1745. Zhang Chao put down his camera. Such a scene that was beyond human control was beyond everyone's imagination. Qin Ge was the first to react. He suddenly shouted, "If something is wrong, it must be a demon. Everyone, get out of here." As he spoke, he took the lead and walked towards the door. However, before he could take 2 steps, the exquisite metal door carved with flowers and wild beasts closed in front of everyone with a bang. It was completely closed. At the same time, bang bang, 2 more bangs. The windows that were previously open were also tightly closed. All the exits that could be used to leave were sealed. As the doors and windows closed, the entire hall also dimmed. Such a scene made everyone's expression turn ugly. Qin Ge didn't believe it. He walked a few steps to the door and wanted to open it. However, the door seemed to be locked from the outside. He couldn't open it alone. Then Qin Ge heard a hoarse voice. "Young man, do you need me to lend you a crowbar?" His whole body stiffened. Qingge paused and turned his head mechanically. An old woman in a black robe was holding a crowbar in her hand and smiling at him eerily. Qingge took a deep breath. Without saying a word, he ran towards the place where everyone was waiting. The rest of the people were also frightened by the old woman who suddenly appeared. Qin Qingqing said with a trembling voice, "Which one of you saw clearly where did she come from?" Zhang Chao was so scared that he even dropped the camera in his hand. Qingge ran in front of them as fast as he could in his life. He couldn't speak at all, and could only gasp in horror. Fortunately, the old woman didn't chase after him. She just stood there with the crowbar in her hand, and maintained a smile on her face as she looked at everyone. Gu Xingyin gently closed her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, everything in her eyes had changed. Those gorgeous and exquisite furnishings were shattered in front of her eyes as if they were a dream. The entire castle was still the same as when she woke up in the morning. No, there was still something different. For example, how was that old woman in a black robe standing in front of the dilapidated door? It was clearly a skeleton with ghostly flames in its eyes. In the hall, the exquisite statue came to life once again. That's right, it was the female ghost that took a picture with Qin Qingqing last night. She walked out of the statue. Gu Xingyin looked at the skeleton at the door and nodded at the female ghost. Then at the corner of the wall, the youth's figure appeared once again. Gu Xingyin's face turned paler and paler. It was only daybreak. Was there a need for such a big fuss? At this moment, Qin Qingqing tugged at Gu Xingyin's sleeve. "Sister Lungsher, what should we do now?" Before Gu Xingyin could answer her question, the light in front of everyone changed again. The candles on the ceiling and walls were all lit up. Light and fire were supposed to bring hope to everyone, but at this moment, everyone couldn't help but shudder violently. Those flames were all dark blue nether fire. Where exactly are we? Shuewan's voice already had a hint of sobbing. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, we're in a ghost castle. A ghost castle worthy of its name. Chapter 1746. At this moment, a sharp voice rang out in everyone's ears. Distinguished guests, welcome to the Ghost Castle's carnival. Along with the strange voice, 6 delicate plates appeared on the dining table in the hall. Each plate was covered with a lid, so no one could see what was inside. Then, everyone watched as the white statue suddenly moved. She turned into a very beautiful woman in a white dress. Qin Qingqing suddenly screamed. She's the female ghost who took a picture with me last night. The woman seemed to be attracted by Qin Qingqing's voice and looked over at everyone. Then she slowly moved toward them. That's right, she moved without moving her feet. Qin Qingqing couldn't help but run toward the back. Her movement seemed to have triggered a switch, and everyone ran toward the back. But the stairs were behind the female ghost, so there wasn't much space for them. Soon they were forced into a corner. Unexpectedly, the female ghost didn't do anything. She only said softly, "Distinguished guests, the ghost castle has prepared a sumptuous breakfast for you." She pointed at the dining table behind her. But who would dare to eat such a strange thing? Zhang Chao said. We just had breakfast. Can we not eat? Gu Xingyin, who was standing beside Zhang Chao, could feel his body trembling. Not eating. The female ghost repeated softly. Then she raised her head and revealed a sinister smile. As soon as she smiled, her fair face turned pale, her beautiful eyes turned a wretched green, and her sharp teeth were exposed between her lips. Not eating. Her sinister smile echoed throughout the ghost castle. If you don't eat, I'll eat you. How big of an impact was it to see a ghost at such a close distance? Qin Qingqing's eyes rolled back and she fainted. Shuewan's legs went weak, and she fell into her boyfriend's arms. But her boyfriend wasn't much better than her. The two of them fell to the ground together. Then, Shuewan felt that she seemed to have pressed on something. She subconsciously turned around and saw a child with a pale face looking at her faintly. Auntie, you're crushing my hand. Ah. After Qin Qingqing, Shuewan also fainted. Gu Xingyin noticed that the men around her were trembling. In fact, Gu Xingyin was very impressed that they were still able to maintain their sanity. If she didn't have the skills given by the system, she would have followed in the footsteps of Qin Qingqing and Shuewan. This was not the time to back down. Therefore, Gu Xingyin looked at the female ghost calmly and said, "Then let's eat breakfast." The female ghost slowly turned around to look at her. She seemed to be very curious about how this human could remain so calm. Only the heavens knew that Gu Xingyin's hands, which were hidden in his sleeves, were gripping the dagger so tightly that his palms were almost bruised. Fortunately, the female ghost didn't say anything after glancing at her. Instead, she turned around to lead the way. Right at this moment, Gu Xingyin gave Zhang Chao a look and glanced at the dagger in his hand. Zhang Chao understood. When the female ghost turned around, he suddenly took a step forward. The dagger in his hand fiercely slashed at the female ghost's body. Go to hell. Chapter 1747. Ah! The female ghost let out a shrill scream. Everyone could see that Zhang Chao's military knife had cut deeply into the female ghost's flesh, but no blood flowed out. However, the female ghost's scream meant that this thing was still harmful to her. Zhang Chao was delighted. He made up his mind and spun the knife in his hand before pulling it out. The knife was clean, but there was nothing on it. The female ghost seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage. She turned around and looked at Zhang Chao eerily. Her shrill scream resounded throughout the castle. As if responding to her scream, the entire castle was suddenly filled with countless ghostly wails and howls. For a moment, a chilly wind blew. Everyone's ears were filled with those hair-raising sounds. Gu Xingyin said coldly, "Wake the two of them up. At this time, no one has time to take care of people who have fainted." Just as she was speaking, countless bright and dark shadows suddenly appeared in every corner. Those shadows were all staring at them maliciously. Qin Qingqing had just opened her eyes when she was frightened by the scene in front of her, and almost fainted again. However, Gu Xingyin directly supported her. "If you faint, none of us will take care of you. At that time, you will lie on the ground alone and be eaten by those ghosts who have been hungry for hundreds of years. Bit by bit, your flesh and blood will be eaten by those ghosts who have been hungry for hundreds of years. In the end, you will become like them." Qin Qingqing screamed. "Don't say it. Don't say it." Only then did Gu Xingyin stop talking. On the other side, Shui Wan also looked at Gu Xingyin with a frightened face. Such a description was really too scary. The female ghost seemed to be the leader of these wandering ghosts. Her cold voice echoed faintly in the ghost castle. "These intruders will be our freshest food. I will offer their blood to the Duke to enjoy. The rest will be our most delicious food." There was a sound of agreement all around. The old woman at the gate said slowly, "But the Duke of this castle hasn't woken up for more than 1,000 years. Is it really okay for us to use his territory?" When they talked about the Duke, even their gloomy faces revealed traces of fear. Clearly, to these ghosts, the mysterious Duke who claimed to be the owner of this castle was an extremely terrifying existence. Unfortunately, these ghosts were using their own methods to communicate. Gu Xingyin and the other adventurers did not hear them at all. At this moment, they were nervous because of the approaching ghosts. Qin Qingqing began to cry. "I must be dreaming, right? This is all fake, right?" Gu Xingyin cruelly exposed her self-deception. "You're wrong. It's all true." She watched as the hole on the female ghost that Zhang Chao had stabbed earlier grew back on its own. It was as if ordinary weapons could cause damage to ghosts, but they were unable to truly kill them. Gu Xingyin was not the only one who saw this scene. Zhang Chao and the others naturally saw it too. It was because of this scene that they were truly in despair. How were they supposed to find a chance to survive in this hellish place? Chapter 1748. At this moment, Gu Xingyin's words gave them hope. "Don't be discouraged. We only need 10 days. We just need to hold on for 10 days. 10 days later, the gate of life will open." Her calm voice sounded in this ghost-infested area, pulling everyone's dispirited hearts back. Qin Qingqing looked at her in confusion. "How do you know?" The dagger in Gu Xingyin's hand flashed, and he cut off the arm of a ghost that was approaching him. The dagger looked small and seemed to be a sharp weapon that could cut iron like mud. Moreover, after the ghost screamed, a thick black fog appeared on its arm, and the wound couldn't heal. Gu Xingyin turned around and smiled at the 5 of them. "You just need to believe in me. In such an environment, in such a situation, if someone told you not to give up, the situation wasn't as bad as you thought. What would you think? The 5 of them didn't know what the others would think. But they chose to believe in her at this moment. They believed in Gu Xingyin and believed that they could win a chance of survival in this ghost purgatory. Even Qin Qingqing gripped the iron rod in her hand tightly. No one was not afraid of death. Who would be willing to give up any chance? If someone had told Qin Qingqing 2 days ago that she would pick up a rod and fight ghosts one day, she would have rolled her eyes. Qin Qingqing would have definitely rolled her eyes and suggested that she go to the hospital. But now, Qin Qingqing only regretted that she didn't take an extra weapon when Gu Xingyin reminded her. A person's potential was really limitless in a desperate situation. At least Gu Xingyin and the other 5 were able to resist this room full of ghosts for a while. However, that was all. No matter how powerful they were just ordinary humans living in modern society. There was no way they could compete with this kind of supernatural ability. Seeing a few hands suddenly reach out from the ground and grab onto Qin Qingqing, Gu Xingyin made a prompt decision. She threw the dagger in her hand towards that direction, and quickly took out a triangular talisman from her pocket with her left hand. With a paw sound, she stuck it on the back of her left hand. A ghost tried to sneak up on Gu Xingyin from behind. The moment it came into contact with her body, green smoke began to rise from its hand. She screamed and quickly retreated, disappearing without a trace. "Stay close to me," Gu Xingyin shouted. They hurriedly did as they were told. Then they realized that once they got close to Gu Xingyin, the ghosts could no longer get close to them. As long as they came into contact with him, they would emit black smoke and scream like normal people who had come into contact with flames. At this moment, everyone looked at Gu Xingyin as if they had seen their savior. Gu Xingyin coughed dryly. Some self-defense items. The few of them stood close together. Gu Xingyin said, "Everyone sit down. Pay attention, just stay close to me." Just now, everyone's nerves were tense to the extreme. Naturally, they all sat down obediently. After suffering a few losses, those ghosts seemed to have understood that there seemed to be something terrifying on these humans that they could not get close to. Most of the ghosts disappeared into the darkness. Only a few of them, led by the female statue, were still standing not far away, staring at them. Even if they knew that there was no danger, seeing those sinister and terrifying ghosts staring at them, this feeling was not something that ordinary people could bear. Qin Qingqing could not help but squeeze in again. She said in a trembling voice, "What should we do next?" According to the routine, the next move was the big move. First watch. See you at night. Please give me a vote to warm the trembling author. Chapter 1749. The others were silent. To be honest, Qin Qingqing's question was exactly what everyone was thinking about right now, including Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin asked the system to confirm that those ghosts would not be in the mood to eavesdrop on their conversation. Then, she slowly opened her mouth and said, "Let me tell you some information that I know." As soon as she said this, the others looked at her with hope in their eyes. Gu Xingyin said, "This ghost castle is now completely sealed off. In other words, don't think that you can run out of the gate. This place has been sealed off by a barrier. You can't get out." She ignored the despair in the other's eyes and continued, "However, it's not completely impossible. Every 10 days, the door of life and death will change. We will have a chance to get out." She raised her head and glanced at the 5 of them one by one. She said word by word, "So, as long as we can hold on for 10 days, we will have a chance of survival." Following her words, everyone's eyes lit up one after another. However, Qingge only looked at Gu Xingyin strangely. "You don't look very happy?" Gu Xingyin said, "Because I only told you the good news and didn't tell you the bad news." As soon as she said this, she felt everyone's eyes gather on her face. Gu Xingyin smiled helplessly. "The worst news is," she raised her left hand. On it was the triangular talisman. "This talisman has a duration of 24 hours. I only have 5 in total." Everyone's expressions changed. This meant that they could only live peacefully for 5 days. In the remaining 5 days, they had to face the ghosts of the entire ancient castle. Thinking of the ghosts that surrounded her just now, Qin Qingqing's body could not help but tremble. This is impossible. We can't hold on for so long. The others' faces were also filled with despair. Qin Qingqing started crying alone. I regret it. I regret it. I shouldn't have disobeyed my mother and taken the money from home to come to this place alone. Now that my mother can't contact me and can't find me, she must be worried to death. Gu Xingyin glanced at the ghost that was attracted by Qin Qingqing's crying. She couldn't help frowning and scolding her. Qin Qingqing, shut up. Among the 6 of them, Qin Qingqing could be said to be the backbone. Therefore, after being scolded like this, Qin Qingqing really did not dare to say anything. Gu Xingyin whispered, "What's the use of crying now? How many times have I told you to turn back and not come here? Did any of you listen?" When she said this, the others thought about it carefully and realized that it was true. Along the way, Leng Shi had indeed told them not to come to the ghost castle several times. Gu Xingyin said faintly, "What we need to do now is to think about how to fight for more time. No one should give up until the last moment." At this moment, Qin Ge suddenly looked at Gu Xingyin. "I remember that along the way, you reminded us many times and hinted for us to turn back. Why? Could it be that you knew that we would encounter such a thing this time?" His gaze was fixed on Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, as expected of horror novels, their imagination was indeed bigger than ordinary people's. Chapter 1750. The rest of the people also looked at Gu Xingyin, wanting to know her answer. They felt that it was very strange. If Gu Xingyin didn't know anything, why would she remind them again and again? If she knew everything, why would she still come to this ghost castle knowing that she would die? Thinking about it again before they came here, Gu Xingyin told the driver that she would pick them up in 10 days. They all felt that Gu Xingyin's entire body was covered in a layer of fog. Gu Xingyin knew that there were some things that she definitely had to give an explanation for. She sighed and said, "I remember that when I was replenishing food in that small village, I once told you that I learned some yin-yang profound techniques." Of course, everyone remembered. They still remembered the thunderbolt in broad daylight. Gu Xingyin said half-truthfully, "Before I came here, I had a divination. The divination showed that it was a great calamity." Qin Qingqing listened attentively and complained, "Since you knew it was a great calamity, why didn't you organize us to come here?" Gu Xingyin glanced at her and sneered, "Touch your heart and ask carefully, Qin Qingqing, did I stop you?" Qin Qingqing's expression changed, and she didn't say anything else. Qin Ge spoke again. "Since the divination showed that it was a great calamity, why did you still insist on coming?" Gu Xingyin sighed helplessly. "The secrets of heaven can't be revealed. Since I used this matter for divination, it means that I've already gotten involved. Even if I don't want to participate, the heavenly Tao won't tolerate it. Moreover, you all heard the thunderbolt in the clear sky earlier. I can't tell anyone about this matter at all. So I can only try my best to prepare and hope that I can last until 10 days later." After Gu Xingyin said this, she let them leave. After knowing that they wouldn't leave, she asked a few people to prepare weapons and food. All of this was understandable. To put it bluntly, Gu Xingyin wanted to say something. It was fine if they understood because they didn't need to waste their breath. But even if they didn't understand, they still had to understand. Now, in this ancient castle, Gu Xingyin was almost the most powerful force they could rely on. Gu Xingyin looked at Qin Qingqing. "If you have any questions, it's best to ask them all at once. I'll answer you now. After that, I won't have the mood and time to do so." She said this mainly for Qin Qingqing to hear. After all, Gu Xingyin was amazed by the things he did in the original plot. She did not want to be implicated by her when the time came. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, Qin Qingqing's expression changed. She lowered her head and said, "No problem." Gu Xingyin said, "Nothing will happen to us for the time being. Let's think about it and see if we can come up with a solution." Everyone fell silent for a moment. Everyone was racking their brains to think of a solution. But how could it be so easy to think of a solution? Now, What was in front of them was almost equivalent to a dead end. Gu Xingyin thought of countless repulsive ideas, but when she thought about it in her mind, she found that it was completely impossible. There was no solution. She raised her hand and looked at the time. Everyone, let's eat something first. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, everyone silently picked up their backpacks. A few people saw their backpacks full of food and thanked Gu Xingyin. If it weren't for her, they would have been carrying 3 or 4 days' worth of food. At that time, even if they were not killed by these ghosts, they would probably starve to death here. Chapter 1751. The few of them ate in silence. At a time like this, not many people had an appetite. In addition, not far away, there were a few malicious ghosts staring at them with their pale green eyes. Under the control of despair and fear, everyone had no appetite at all. However, Gu Xingyin said sternly, "Even if you can't eat, you have to eat. You have to stuff it in. If you don't eat, you can't guarantee that your body has enough strength and energy. When the time comes, even if there's a chance in front of you, you won't have the strength to run out." Then they realized that the ghosts who had been watching them had moved. Perhaps it was because they saw them eating. The ghosts turned their heads sluggishly. Then, the young noble-looking ghost said something to the female ghost, and the ghosts moved toward the dining table. They still remembered the dining table with snow-white cutlery and 6 exquisite plates on it. It was said that the ghosts had prepared the food for them. However, looking at the current situation, they seemed to be preparing to enjoy it for themselves. They watched as the ghosts slowly removed the covers on the bowls with their hands, picked up the knives and forks, and prepared to eat. Unfortunately, the few people present had excellent eyesight. Therefore, everyone saw clearly what the ghosts were eating. On the plates, there was a bloody human palm. Ugh! Shuewan was the first to lose control. She turned sideways and vomited all the food that she had forced herself to eat. Her reaction obviously stimulated the others. One after another, except for Gu Xingyin and Zhang Chao, everyone else vomited. Gu Xingyin's heart was actually a little turbulent. However, she didn't expect that this skill of being as steady as Mount Tai could not only affect the body, but also control the physiological reaction. She was able to stand firm in such an environment. As for the other Zhang Chao, he relied on his own ability. Gu Xingyin secretly admired them in her heart. Everyone turned their heads to avoid looking in that direction. But the sounds of chewing and tearing rang clearly in their ears. Qin Qingqing reached out and grabbed her hair. "I'm really going crazy." Actually, it wasn't just her. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. They were all wondering if they would be the ones at the ghost's table in a few days' time. Gu Xingyin's heart also felt numb. She began to crazily force herself to think of a way. She must think of a way. She absolutely could not sit and wait for death. Time passed bit by bit. The first 24 hours passed. Gu Xingyin signaled everyone with her eyes, but no one moved. They were trying their luck and stalling for time. They prayed in their hearts that the ghosts wouldn't know that their charms had lost their effect. What if they were lucky enough to drag out the 10 days? However, it turned out that even Lady Luck was not on their side. In less than 10 minutes, Qin Qingqing screamed. A pale hand suddenly reached out from the ground and grabbed her calf. Soon after, an equally pale face emerged from the ground, revealing a row of white teeth as it opened its mouth at her. Qin Qingqing was dumbfounded. She didn't even remember to resist. Fortunately, Qin Ge, who was sitting next to her, reacted quickly and hit the ghost's hand with a stick. Perhaps the ghost was in pain, so it shrank back into the ground and disappeared. However, the commotion here had once again attracted the attention of the ghosts. The 7th update. There are 3 more updates before 12 o'clock. See you later. Chapter 1752. Looking at the ghosts who were closing in on them once again, Gu Xingyin could only take out another piece of talisman paper and stick it on her hand. The few of them heaved a sigh of relief once again. But Gu Xingyin's mood didn't relax because of this. This was the 2nd piece of talisman paper. It could still be peaceful for 4 more days. Then what about after 4 days? After 4 days there were still 5 more days. How were they going to spend the next 5 days? Gu Xingyin started to discuss with the system. Is it possible for you to arrange a certain death mission for me that is completely impossible to complete? The system's white light flashed. Host, this kind of thing is impossible. The system doesn't decide which world to go to, and the system doesn't know everything. But the system can tell the host with certainty that any mission can be completed. Gu Xingyin's heart suddenly calmed down. Although the system didn't say anything effective, but at least Gu Xingyin knew that at least she didn't have no hope of survival. As long as it wasn't an unsolvable hopeless situation, there would definitely be a way. Gu Xingyin said to the other 5 people, I just did a silent divination in my heart. It's not like we have no hope. Everyone's eyes lit up at once. Gu Xingyin said with a calm face, the result I just got is that there is a 9 out of 10 chance of survival. In other words, although this ancient castle is filled with danger, we still have a chance of survival. As long as we can find it, we will definitely be able to get out alive. Qin Qingqing looked suspiciously at Gu Xingyin. Is what you said true? You're really not lying to us? Gu Xingyin glanced at her and said, Then tell me, Qin Qingqing, we've already come to this point. What's the point of me using this kind of thing to lie to you? She really didn't like to deal with people like Qin Qingqing. It was really tiring. Qin Qingqing choked on her words again and could only choke. Even if there is a way, who knows if we can find it or not? 9 out of 10 chance of survival means that the probability of dying is much higher than surviving. This time, Gu Xingyin didn't even need to say anything. Everyone else's expression didn't look good. When they heard Gu Xingyin's words, they had the greatest desire for survival. However, Qin Qingqing kept pouring cold water on them. No matter who it was, who could stand it? Even Shui Wan, who had always been good-tempered, couldn't help but say, Qingqing, this method was thought of by humans. You have to find your own way out. Could it be that according to what you said, since we don't have any hope, why don't we just sit here and wait for death? Sit here? Gu Xingyin suddenly had an idea. She suddenly recalled the original plot. In the original plot, the 6 of them didn't have any amulets or gold fingers. But in the end, Qin Qingqing survived. In the beginning, after reading the plot, she thought that those people had all died in the illusion created by the ghosts, and Qin Qingqing had escaped because she had gone crazy. But now that she thought about it, she realized that it wasn't like that. These ghosts would really fight on their own. According to what she had experienced, Qin Qingqing definitely wouldn't be able to survive in this place for 10 days. So, this meant that in the original plot, Qin Qingqing had actually accidentally found the only way out? Gu Xingyin started to recall the original plot bit by bit. To be honest, the description in the original plot was quite gory. But in order to find the result, Gu Xingyin had no choice but to bite the bullet and read on carefully, not missing a single word. Chapter 1753. She ignored the bloody details about how people died. Gu Xingyin finally saw the moment when Qin Qingqing was alone. There were ghosts chasing after her. In a panic, she pushed aside a ghost that was blocking her way and ran upstairs. Behind her, Qin Qingqing went crazy. There was no more detailed description of it. But Gu Xingyin suddenly caught a detail. Upstairs. Could it be that the key to Qin Qingqing's survival was upstairs? Gu Xingyin's heart suddenly jumped. This time it was not because of fear, but excitement. She suddenly turned her head and said to a person with a drooping head, I have a guess. Everyone looked at her blankly. Gu Xingyin saw their expressions inside. Cheer up. We are not at the end of our rope yet. Think about it. We are sitting in the castle, eating, and watching the best horror movie in the world. What is there to be dissatisfied with? Even in such an environment, Gu Xingyin's lame joke still made people laugh. Zhang Chao was the first to laugh out loud. Leng Shi is right. We are not at the end of our rope yet. What are we afraid of? Gu Xingyin likes such smart people the most. Zhang Chao asked her at this time. What guess do you have? Gu Xingyin didn't want to tell them that upstairs was probably their only hope of survival. After all, it was just a guess. If it was wrong, wouldn't it be even more unbearable if they lost hope when there was hope? She just said in a low voice, We can't keep sitting here. I want to go to the second floor and see if there is anything. As soon as she said this, everyone looked at the place where the statue of the female ghost was. The place where the statue was located happened to be at the top of the stairs. This also meant that if they wanted to go to the second floor, they had to go through the statue of the female ghost. And everyone looked at the stairs. The castle was too big, and the stairs were very wide and long. At least from their point of view, they could only see that the stairs seemed to be inlaid with gold extending all the way up, and then disappeared into the invisible darkness. It was frightening for no reason. Qin Qingqing was the first to cower. Who knows if there's something even scarier on the second floor? Gu Xingyin lightly interrupted her. Then tell me, what's the difference between meeting a ghost and meeting a group of ghosts? Do you think we'll meet anything other than ghosts on the second floor? She then looked at the others. Zhang Chao was the first to express his willingness. Sitting here is a waste of time. Why don't we give it a try? Several men expressed their willingness to give it a try. Shuewan was a little scared, but she still nodded. In fact, everyone knew that in their current situation, the most foolish thing to do was to sit there and not move. However, they knew that they wouldn't be in danger as they sat there. However, if they went up to the second floor, no one could predict what would happen next. Opportunity is always accompanied by risk. Gu Xingyin only said this one sentence. Qin Qingqing thought for a while and finally stood up. Gu Xingyin asked everyone to carry their bags. This was something that could not be damaged. She seriously reminded them. I don't know if those ghosts will stop us when we go upstairs. Everyone just needs to remember one thing. Stay close to each other. In this way, those ghosts won't be able to get close to us. No matter what happens, don't be afraid. They can't hurt us. Chapter 1754. Everyone nodded. However, when they were really faced with it, they realized how difficult it was to do it even though they knew it in their hearts. The group of people slowly stood up and leaned against each other. The hand that leaned outside held a weapon. They began to move toward the middle of the living room. As the only humans left in this ghost castle, their movements obviously attracted the attention of countless ghosts. Then everyone understood what it meant to challenge the limit. As they walked, countless hands appeared on the ground. It was as if you took one more step forward, those hands would climb up and grab your pants, drag your legs, and drag you to hell. Fortunately, Gu Xingyin was walking at the front. Although she felt that her heart was about to stop, on the surface, she was still calm and unruffled, as if she didn't see anything. She unswervingly continued to step forward. Then, those hands that were blocking the way hurriedly retracted, as if they had met their natural enemy. In an instant, the entire ghost castle was filled with a chilly wind, and the sound of ghosts crying could be heard. Everyone's body was trembling. In fact, they could not even tell if they were trembling or if their companions were trembling. Of course, the truth was that everyone was trembling. Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Even if she believed in the quality of the system's products, when she saw those things, she was still afraid. They would drag her to hell. This is really too exciting. Zhang Chao's face was stiff, and he squeezed the words out from between his teeth. He could still barely speak, but the others were so nervous that they were tongue-tied. There was only one thought in their minds. Never let go, they can't touch me. There was nothing else. Then they quickly reached the staircase. Gu Xingyin's movements almost imperceptibly paused. That was because the female statue was standing there, looking at them sinisterly. She had already removed that layer of beautiful disguise. On the green and white ghostly face, the pale eyes stared straight at them. She reached out her hand with the same pale green fingernails, and made a grabbing gesture at Gu Xingyin and the others. Qin Qingqing was scared to tears again. Let's not go, okay? Not going, I really don't want to go. As if responding to her words, the female ghost let out a burst of gloomy laughter that echoed in everyone's ears. Gu Xingyin felt cold sweat trickling down his forehead. She was really scared. But he had no choice even if he was afraid. She said sternly, Qin Qingqing, shut up. If you're afraid, you have to clench your teeth. She can't touch you, so what are you afraid of? Tell me, what are you afraid of? If you can walk with your eyes closed, you will. But let me tell you, if you fall behind alone, no one will save you. Qin Qingqing was so scared that she didn't dare to speak. Everyone could feel that she was squeezing in even more. To be honest, everyone was already squeezed very tightly, and this was already very uncomfortable. However, no one objected to this. They even felt that at this time, only by relying on each other tightly could they give themselves a little sense of security. Gu Xingyin's words were not only said to Qin Qingqing, but also to herself. She looked at the female statue ghost not far away in front of her, gritted her teeth, and walked straight towards her. Phew, the 10,000 chapters were finally finished. I won't tell you that when I was writing this, I was sitting alone in a very big room with a window behind me, imagining the plot in my mind. I'm probably already a useless branch really. I'll only write the male lead tomorrow. Please give me a vote. Please bless me with no nightmares tonight. Good night. Chapter 1755. Bit by bit. She was getting closer and closer. Gu Xingyin had already walked to the side of the female ghost statue. If the female ghost stood still, she would directly bump into her. Gu Xingyin took a deep breath in her heart, and then, without hesitation, she stepped in the direction of the female ghost. The female ghost suddenly opened her mouth. Everyone saw clearly that the female ghost's mouth suddenly enlarged infinitely, as if it had become an endless black hole. It was a real bloody mouth. And if Gu Xingyin took another step forward, the brain hole would directly bump into her mouth. Xuewan, who was tightly pressed against Gu Xingyin, subconsciously stopped in her tracks. Gu Xingyin's body stopped. She raised her head and looked at the bloody mouth that revealed its sharp teeth. It was very close to her. It was so close that if she moved forward a little bit, she might be doomed eternally. It was such a horrible scene, but Gu Xingyin laughed. She said lightly, "I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? She can only scare me." Yes, she was sure in her heart that this female ghost couldn't do anything to her. Even in such a situation, she only dared to scare him from behind. If she could really do anything to her, how could she still maintain this ridiculous posture? After saying that, she put some strength in her feet. Her whole body directly bumped into the female ghost. Gu Xingyin didn't feel anything. It was as if she was walking normally, and she didn't even notice that she had bumped into something. But everyone saw clearly that when the female ghost was bumped into by Gu Xingyin, her whole body was like a broken mirror, shattering into countless pieces with a crash, and disappearing like a phantom. Gu Xingyin continued to walk up without hesitation. After Qin Qingqing walked up, she suddenly turned her head. When she turned around, she almost screamed again. At the place where the female statue had shattered, there was another female ghost that looked exactly the same as the one that had shattered. Seeing Qin Qingqing turn around, the female ghost raised her head and gave her a sinister smile. Then she stretched out her arm. That arm seemed to be able to extend infinitely. Qin Qingqing saw it reach out in front of her, and was about to grab her leg in the next moment. Qin Qingqing subconsciously wanted to run up the stairs. If he ran upwards, he would be able to get rid of this female ghost. Just as she was about to run away, she remembered Gu Xingyin's stern words. Qin Qingqing's heart quivered. She suppressed the fear in her heart, and closed her eyes tightly. I can't run. I can't leave everyone. She can't hurt me, nothing happened. When Qin Qingqing opened her eyes again, she saw that the female ghost statue was still standing in the same place, looking at her with resentment and unwillingness. Qin Qingqing's heart suddenly relaxed. When she looked at these ghosts again, even though she was still afraid, she no longer felt like she had lost her ability to think. It was probably growth after experiencing life and death. At this time, Qin Qingqing suddenly realized that because she had closed her eyes in fear and didn't move her feet, everyone seemed to be standing on the stairs without moving. She turned around and saw that everyone was looking at her. Qin Qingqing was a little embarrassed. I'm sorry, I'm holding everyone back again. This time Gu Xingyin, who had always despised her, softened her expression. It's okay, let's continue. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.